ministers. He declared his assets when he was a candidate, and he was not supposed to, and we can only appreciate that.
Youth of Nigeria's Niger State stage an early demonstration ahead of the planned nationwide demonstration on August 1.
They say we should not protest. Yesterday, some people came out and protested, and no one said anything to them. But we'll be patient. We are law-abiding.
And Ghana's Electoral Commission targets 70,000 new voters in mop-up exercise ahead of the 2024 elections. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is a more edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana, Liberia and Sierra Leone. Let's begin in Guinea, where the preliminary draft of the new constitution was made public on Monday by the National Transitional Council. In this new constitution, a Senate and a High Court of Justice are now created, while the age to run in the presidential election has been limited from 35 to 80 years old. More so, independent candidates have also been instituted in all national elections. If this constitution is adopted by referendum, it may not be subject to revision or change until after a period of 30 years from the date of its promulgation. Here is a report traveling by our Conakry correspondent Chez and voiced by Abdullah Hassan.
It took Guinean parliamentarians 3 years to draft and adopt a new constitution to replace the one dissolved in 2021 by the ruling army. In the preliminary draft of the new constitution, Guinean parliamentarians were keen to limit the age of candidates in the presidential election and the number of mandates that the President of the Republic must exercise. Independent candidacies were also authorized. Jean-Paul Cantimbaduno is the rapporteur of the Law Commission. To fight against what are described as a constitutional coups, the National Transitional Council blocked any possibility of revision or change of the constitution for 30 years. According to Jean-Paul Cantimbaduno, for the first time, Guinea will have a Senate to assist the National Assembly, announced the rapporteur of the Law Commission. According to the president of the NTC, before being officially handed over to the transitional authorities, the preliminary draft of the Guinean constitution will be presented to all components of the nation and Guinea's technical, financial and diplomatic partners. This popularization operation will last until September 2024.
Abdullah Hassan voiced that report as filed in by our Conakry correspondent Cherno Afai Ibrahim Abadi. The Malian army says it has taken control of the locality of Afarak in the Kidal, northern region of the country. However, the General Staff acknowledges that it has suffered significant losses in the battle for control of the town of Tinzantene. Violent clashes pitted the Malian army and its Russian auxiliaries against pro-independence groups in the north in this locality near the Algerian border. Francis Boniface has the rest of the story.
In a new statement issued Monday evening, the General Staff of the Armed Forces first announced that FAMA has been engaging since July 19 in a vast operation to stabilize the areas of Inafarak and Tinzwaten in Kidal region in the north of the country. The army congratulates itself on having taken control of Inafarak. In Tinzwaten, the military command said it had recorded a number of losses of human lives and equipment. Without further detail, in fighting against pro-independence groups in the north, the army says it has clashed with a coalition of armed groups, including the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara and the Group for the Support of Islam and Muslims, two violent extreme groups that operate in the north of the country. Bamako continues that the weather conditions, including a sandstorm, have allowed armed groups to increase their numbers. The General Staff of the Armed Forces indicates that the enemy used drones, kamikaze vehicles against Russian soldiers and their auxiliaries. The army acknowledges that it has suffered a setback during this battle. According to the authorities, the defeat of the Malian army in Tinzwaten, the term of which was used differently by the General Staff of the Armed Forces, cannot call into question the dynamics of the soldiers engaged in the reconquest of the entire territory.
Francis Boniface filed a report staying in Mali as torrential rains have left thousands of people homeless in the town of Bla in the Sahel region and the center of the country. These figures are documented in a new report from the Mali section of the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA. More details with Nadide Tete.
OCHA Mali announced that it produced this report published on Monday in collaboration with humanitarian partners. The document states that over 400 households, or approximately 6,900 people, were affected by the torrential rains that occurred in Bla in the San region between July 22 and 25. The report highlights that the heavy rains impacted the city of Bla and the 17 communes of the circle, resulting in a total rainfall of 100 millimeters. Among the 6,900 victims, 63% are women and children under the age of 5. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned that those affected by the disaster urgently need food, water and hygiene and sanitation supplies. A contact in Bla confirmed significant damage caused by the rain, including the flooding of a health center that destroyed many medicines and forced the evacuation of some patients to the neighboring region of Segu. Several houses were also destroyed by the flood waters. Currently, local authorities have established a crisis unit to assist the victims, many of whom have taken refuge in public schools in the area.
That was Salute Cham's report in Bamako and voiced by Nadide Tuti.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
And over here in Senegal, reactions among the civil society are trailing the asset declaration of President Bashir Diomaye Faye published by the Constitutional Council on Monday. The Senegalese president wants to set a good example and thus remain faithful to his campaign promises of good governance. Sankle Janko has more details in this report.
In the statement made public on Monday by the Constitutional Council, the asset declaration of President Bassirou Diomaye Faye provides details on his real estate, bank accounts, debts, and other assets. By playing the transparency card, the Senegalese head of state's gesture is welcomed by civil society, which works on issues of budgetary transparency and good governance. Here is Amadou Samb, an activist.
I think the civic space is receiving that, I think, positively, because this enters in the regulation of Senegal at the Article 34 of the Constitution, that the president has to declare his assets as well as all the ministers. And let's remind that he declared his assets when he was a candidate, and he was not supposed to. And now he declared his assets, and he is not supposed or forced to do it in this deadline. He has much more deadline for doing so. So he has done it, and we can only appreciate that. And we believe that it is just a call for those ministers who haven't declared yet to do so.
Civil society also hopes that, unlike his predecessors, at the end of his term, the Senegalese president will also present his heritage. Amadou Sam speaks again on this.
You have to declare at the entry, and then you have to declare when you go out of the office. So this is a law, and then you have to respect that. And we hope that he will do so, because we believe that he will do that. And we are going also to check, because we have to see something that is ironic. So this is the first time that we have a president coming in the power that without big resources.
For many, President Faye, who has made good governance one of his priorities, wants to set an example, while the declaration of assets of the ministers is still awaited.
Thank you, Janko, for that report. We head now to Liberia, because the discussion surrounding what was said by the orator, especially in relation to Liberia-US relations during the country's 177th Independence Day anniversary, continues to remain on the lips of Liberians. During the event last Friday, the Independence Day orator, Dr. Robtel Najay Pali, used the oration to publicly criticize the role of the United States in the affairs of Liberia, a country founded by freed slaves from the United States in the 1800s. WDL's Denington Papa has been following the development and now reports.
The orator Robtel Najay Pali, during her address, among other things, criticized the United States for their alleged involvement in the domestic affairs of Liberia, alleging that America has exploited the country since independence in 1847. In a rather post-analysis of her oration, renowned Liberian economist Samuel Jackson criticized Pele for bluntly downplaying the efforts by the United States to develop Liberia.
And she demonstrated all the inexperience of not being a national orator to unite. But because a national orator with statesmen will not make divisive remarks in the presence of foreign diplomats that we invited to our 177 independence. Our prime ally that granted the first $100,000 to the American Colonization Society to form the country. That financed the ship Elizabeth to come to Providence Island.
Independent analyst Abdullah Kiatamba, for his part, explains that America is the greatest ally of Liberia and has contributed immensely towards the growth of Liberia and its people.
But I think America has done wonderful for Liberians. Liberians that left from the war were sheltered in a safe haven called America. They were given legal status. Their children have grown. They have built homes. They have built wealth. They have a space, an opportunity to do big things. So America is our greatest ally. America provided so many relief for Liberia during this conflict. The American intervention, look at the World War II when ambassador went across Freeport with Lord movement. It was the end. Look, America's role has been fundamental.
Despite these opposing views, Raphael Ninjepele says she has absolutely no apologies for comments against the United States, describing the decision of the U.S. delegation to walk out of the event hall during her speech as a distraction.
That's what national orators are supposed to do. They're supposed to be provocateurs. I have no apologies, no qualms. I apologize to no one for what I said. I stand by my statements. I stand by every word. I stand by every sentence, every paragraph, because as I mentioned earlier, I am a scholar par excellence of Liberia. My message was to Liberian people, and it was by a Liberian. Everything else is noise. Everything else is a distraction. And I would actually implore and appeal to the Liberian people to go to my speech, dissect it.
Alongside the group of NGOs and CSOs, the Liberian government has also distanced itself from the comments by Raphael Ninjepele, saying her views do not in any way represent the views of the Liberian Authority. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
In Nigeria's north-central state of Niger State, youth in a neighboring state of the country's capital took to the street to protest the country's worsening economic conditions and soaring inflation. The demonstration, initially scheduled to begin nationwide on August 1, made an early start in the state on Monday. Osman Marin Abuja has more details in this report.
Protesters marching on the popular Kaduna-Abuja Expressway carried placards with messages such as "Fuel subsidy must be back," "Enough is enough," and "Hardship is unbearable." Speaking in Hausa, one of the protesters expressed his grievances to journalists.
My name is Muhammad Nazir Babandoki. We are doing this protest because of what's happening. Fuel prices have increased. No one is talking about it. They say we should not protest. Yesterday, some people came out and protested, and no one said anything to them. It's us who came out today that they want to stop. But we'll be patient. We are law-abiding. We didn't come out to fight. We came out for a peaceful demonstration. So they've asked us to stop and wait till Thursday. Head of the police has met us and has asked us to wait till Thursday. We'll be patient. On Thursday, we'll be back.
Meanwhile, in Lagos, the Yoruba Revolutionary Movement has pledged support for the planned protest and mobilizing its members. Wale Balogun is the president of the movement.
We are saying that Yorubas, we are ready for this protest because we are suffering. And we are saying that Yorubas will be part of this struggle. They were coming out en masse to ventilate their anger because of the suffering and hardship that is ongoing in Nigeria.
However, not everyone agrees with the protests. Mujahid Asarido Kubo, a former militant from Niger Delta region, has called for support for the government, stating that the planned protest is not the best option.
The president must be supported at this moment to save this country. People should set politics aside. Who had ever visited Somalia? Isembari was president of Somalia. Some good people. Some people who are better than all others said Isembari was not good enough. We will remove him, and they remove him. Over 30 years, Somalia had not recovered. Who had been to Liberia before? The Liberian president was removed by Sergeant Daw. Since after that time, Liberia had not recovered.
As the August 1 set date for the protest approaches, the federal and state governments continue to urge citizens to shelve the planned protest as tensions rise across the country. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The National Transitional Council in Guinea presents draft constitution for adoption. Reaction sprouts among the civil society following asset declaration by Senegalese President Faye. Youth of Nigeria's Niger State staged an early demonstration ahead of the planned nationwide protest on August 1. And still ahead in the news, Ghana's Electoral Commission targets 70,000 new voters in mop-up exercise ahead of the 2024 election. We also have the newspaper review, the guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Oh, don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org, and we are also streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. Let's head to Ghana, where the Electoral Commission EC says it hopes to capture between 50,000 to 70,000 new voters onto the electoral roll in its upcoming mop-up voter registration exercise, scheduled to take place from Thursday, August 1 to Saturday, August 3, 2024. The three-day exercise is meant to give an opportunity to persons who turned 18 years after the recent limited voter registration and those who could not register previously to have their names captured in the poll book. Addressing a news conference in Accra, Samuel Tete, a deputy chairman of the EC in charge of operations, said the commission had designated its 268 district offices, 26 public universities, and 41 prison centers across the country for the exercise. Additionally, he said the exercise would be done only online, adding that the Commission had engaged Mobile Telecommunication Network (MTN) extensively to ensure stable internet connectivity during the exercise. The EC, between May 7 to 29, 2024, carried out a limited voter registration exercise to capture all eligible voters onto electoral roll ahead of the December 7 general elections. Well, still in Ghana, the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagby, has issued a public apology following the government's controversial attempt to amend the road traffic regulations, which would have allowed members of Parliament and state officials to use sirens and be exempt from speed limits. The proposed amendment sparked significant public outrage, prompting Bagby to initially distance himself from the legislative instrument's introduction in the House. Well, here he is making a formal address to the Parliament on Monday.
This proposed legislative instrument laid before this esteemed House on the 14th of June 2024 and was set to mature on the 19th of July 2024 sparked considerable discourse and discontent among the Ghanaian populace. The proposed amendment sought to grant certain public officials, including ministers of state, members of parliament, and justices of the Superior Courts of Judicature, the privilege of using sirens on our roads and exemption from speed limits. This provision has been perceived by many as a means for the political class to evade the very traffic challenges that affect the general public, leading to widespread public outcry. And following the opposition's firm stance against the legislative instrument, the government has decided to withdraw the proposed amendments. We recognize the public's perception of insensitivity, and I'm here to offer an apology and assure the Ghanaian people that this Parliament remains acutely aware of and responsive to their needs.
Alban Bagby is Ghana's Speaker of Parliament. In Côte d'Ivoire, after the eviction operation of the population of Adjamé village, who saw their homes and businesses destroyed a few days ago, a document had circulated on social networks reporting compensation of 4 billion CFA francs, about $6.6 million, that would have been paid to the village chiefdom, information that the village leaders automatically rejected. The director of Agarut, the country's road management agency, Fabrice Koulibaly, on Monday issued a denial during a local television broadcast. Achetiso has the rest of the story.
No money has been paid to any village chief. The money is in the escrow account, so I am denying it. That's the general manager of the road management agency, Ageroute. Fabrice Koulibaly did not fail to point out that those affected can come and sign the compensation certificates to recover their compensation. Continuing, the DG of Ageroute specified that following an eviction, the census for compensation takes into account the habitats and the occupants, namely the owner, the tenant, the free accommodation, the land, the houses, and businesses. As for the notables who argue that it is a village and not a district, they invite the authorities to treat the situation with much more discernment. A call to which the director of Ageroute responded by declaring that in view of the new configurations of the operation, discussions will be held in order to take into account all those impacted.
That was our Abidjan correspondent Al Benade's report and voiced by Echa Tiso.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, we're joined Sankli Jankin Manjul for the newspaper review.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of the newspaper review coming to you from Banjul, the Gambia. Let's begin with the Fourier newspaper, and the lead story on the Fourier newspaper today reads, Gambia's net borrowing stands at $41 billion, says with a photo of Sidiketa, the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs. Agric Minister responds to NAM's queries about a fertilizer. That's another story. This other one reads, government promises to construct 500-kilometer new roads. That's another story on the Fourier newspaper. This one reads, Basse Jiroba Express dissatisfaction in VP Mohamed B.S. Jallo. Swaibu Toure advocates for creation of national troops. Swaibu is the National Assembly member for Woolly East. A very vocal National Assembly member there. Let's shift our attention to the Point newspaper for today. And the lead story on the Point newspaper reads, $45 million Kotu Stream project to support 200,000 flood-hit Gambians. Gambia, Iran resume diplomatic ties after 14 years. The photo, of course, the foreign minister. Still with the Point newspaper, this one reads, Ambassador Jabate presents letters of credence to President of Slovak Republic. Slain British lady's ex-boyfriend could be the perpetrator. That is, according to the Defense Counsel of this particular case. Gash donates solar street lights worth $1.2 million to Sanyang. GTSC goes digital in National Transportation System. This one reads, more politicians criticize Barrow over death comments on Dabo. Now let's shift our attention to the final newspaper for today, and that is the Standard newspaper. And the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads, most Gambian licensed fishing vessels take catches to Senegal. That's the lead story on the Standard newspaper with the photo of Musa Drame, the Minister of Fisheries and Water Resources. Still with the Standard newspaper, just like the previous newspaper, Gambia resumes diplomatic ties with Iran. Of course, that's another story on the Standard newspaper. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies. Let's back to you in the studio.
Sankli Janko there with the newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
I will take you back to a worrying development of money laundering which has aided the financing of terrorism across the sub-region. GABA, Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, says disrupting the financing and local economies of violence is crucial to defeating terrorist groups, which has become a menace across West Africa. The ECOWAS agencies, which protects the national economies and financial and banking systems of signatory states against the proceeds of crime and combat the financing of terrorism, asserts that, however, it is making significant strides to erode the negative impact of money laundering and terrorist financing. WDL caught up with Mwazu Umar, GABA's Director Policy and Research, who threw more insight into the group's action plans.
Well, the reality is that when it comes to money laundering, you will make all your efforts, but you still know that the criminals are also making efforts. So your efforts can be countered by their efforts, and their efforts can be countered by your efforts. It depends on how you remain engaged and you sustain your efforts and discover new strategies to counter the strategies of criminals. So It is not something that is done and dusted. It is something that we have to continue to reinvent yourself to be able to fully appreciate how the criminal world is working at any point in time, and then adopt the relevant strategies to counter them. It's a cat and mouse game. So there is no end to it. It is something that we must continue to work on to the extent that our countries are involved in this countering money laundering. We do see a lot of progress. First, by the number of exports that are being built in these countries. Second, is by the institutions that are committed to this fight. And third is by the efforts we see on the ground in terms of arrests, seizures, and condemnations, or what you call prosecution and adjudication. And increasingly assets are being recovered, and those assets are very critical to criminals. And once you are able to seize assets from criminals, that's where it pains them the most and all that. So our new strategy is to ensure that asset recovery is given the place it deserves in countering money laundering by going after their wealth wherever it is located in the world, using partnership and other means of international cooperation.
Participants from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and like you and I know, these countries have formed its own alliance. Is JABA still functioning in this country, and how?
Well, JABA is not within the political organs of ECOWAS. We are a technical organ, and that means that our work is just largely technical. We work based on the authority given to us by our member states. Our members, the authority of heads of states and government has directed us to continue to engage these countries, to continue to provide them the support that is required. Until we receive a counter directive, this is what we are going to be doing with them. And happily, as you can see, they have responded. They are here, 10 persons from each of the countries, and 30 of them are all here. That means that they do appreciate that the fight against money laundering is beyond politics, is beyond division. It is something that we must all come together to fight.
That was Moaz Omar Gavas, Director, Policy and Research. And in sport news, Nigeria's the Tigers have started the Paris 2024 Olympic campaign on an impressive note, stunning world number 3 Australia in the women's basketball event of the Games. The girls won the Monday basketball encounter 75-76 in the French city of Lille. Meanwhile, Nigerian boxer Cynthia Ogunshimilori has been kicked out of the Paris Olympics after failing a drug test. The 22-year-old has been handed a provisional suspension while she awaits her fate. In the meantime, Olympic organizers have cancelled the second day of a triathlon training and the River Seine planned for Monday after weekend downpours in Paris polluted the waterway, but said they were confident the medal event will be held this week. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukudi and Mauro Diouf for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News. I am Emo Edit. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 1